The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. 21 plus and present in Virginia. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This episode is brought to you by Chevy Silverado. When it's time for you to ditch the blacktop and head off-road, do it in a truck that says no to nothing. The Chevy Silverado Trail Boss. Get the rugged capability of its Z71 suspension and 2-inch factory lift. Plus, impressive torque and towing capacity thanks to an available Duramax 3-liter turbo diesel engine. Where other trucks call it quits, you'll just be getting started. Visit Chevy.com to learn more.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello, welcome to 4Kids Flashback. My name is Tara Sands, and I'm joined by
Steve Yurko.
Here we are with an interview today that I am super nervous for because we are talking to a real live brainiac. Right?
One of them science people.
Yeah, I mean, we toss the word brainiac around, but like this guy actually is a brain-iac. He studies the brain. And I hope he doesn't analyze ours too closely.
I wouldn't mind that.
Really? You want some analyze? We can analyze you. I'm up for that.
Yeah, let's learn more about ourselves today.
Yeah, so we're having neuroscientist on today, and I was thinking about how science was not a strength for me in high school. Was it for you?
Science?
Okay? Yeah. How'd you do?
No. The only science I did well in was biology. And that's easy.
Oh, no, see, I was the opposite. Like, I did okay in chemistry because it was math.
But
biology,
I'm not good at math. So,
okay.
Chemistry.
Ugh,
Chemistry,
biology.
I was bad at, but, like, I remember that teacher, one project, I just drew something. And I was working on, I think, like, during a study hall right before I had to, like, turn it into. And I remember still, she, like, pulled me aside and she, like, complimented me so much because it's probably, like, the only interaction we ever really had because I was not, like, that great of a student. But, like, she was just so touched by the drawing. So at least I didn't fail the class.
Wait, the drawing was for what? I'm confused.
I don't know, I think we had to, like, just do, like, a project on one of the elements and something. Okay. And any chance when, like, it used to be, like, projects where it's like, here's a list of things you could do. If any of them revolved around artwork, that's what I did because it was an easy A.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe, like, you drew a really good, like, frog dissection thing. Like, you probably would have been good at that. But they gave you that, like, crappy graphic of the frog and you had to, like, circle stuff and,
Yeah, I still dissected a frog, too, at one point. And that was, like, and it was weird because, like, we did it and then, like, I heard, like, oh, we weren't supposed to do it yet. And then, I don't know, we never did it again. And I don't even think they do that in school anymore.
Oh, that smell.
Seems a
just
little
the
inhumane.
Smell of that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It was something.
I think my mom let me be absent. I did it. I think I had to do it twice. Or no, I had to dissect a starfish once. I think I did that. And then I think she let me be absent the day of the frog.
What's inside a starfish?
Guts.
Or a sea star.
Sea star. Just the
It's guts.
It's so, I mean, I do kind of get why that would be sort of useful, but I never need to do that again.
The problem with me in school is, and maybe this is maybe this is a topic of conversation for another brainiac. But I felt like a lot of school was just memorizing it till the test is over, and then it just it leaves my brain. But what hasn't left my brain?
What?
Like the names of the first 151 Pokemon.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, because that information lives in a region of your brain that he did many studies on. I think don't let me forget. I want to ask him today what the craziest thing he's had to dissect is, and I'm sure he's dissected a bunch of brains.
Hopefully none of the children that played Pokemon or the adults that played Pokemon as
No,
kids.
but let's make sure we ask him that. I don't want to forget to ask that.
All right, I'll make sure to remember.
Ugh. And people eat monkey brains. Like that's so wrong that people eat.
Is that a thing, or is that just like a racial stereotype from
I think it's
Temple
I
of
think
Doom?
it's really a thing. I don't know. We'll Google it, but I do think it is. And I just feel like eating the brains of it's not. I mean, it is mostly because it's a monkey, and who don't eat a monkey. But I think it's like, why would you want to eat the brains of an animal, of any animal?
I don't know.
To get smarter?
I don't know, if you eat their hearts, you gain their courage, probably.
Yeah, this is all Wizard of Ozzy now. Now it's you just eat their brains and their hearts, and
I would understand if it was like, hey, you gotta use every part of the animal, don't let anything go to waste.
I get that if you're in a certain demographic and it's what everyone else is doing.
Are we also going to ask them what do brains taste like?
Yes, that's the main question today. Okay, enough of that. How are you doing, Steve?
All right. It's a rainy day in Los Angeles, which is like nice. I like it.
You do. I know. I'm supposed to drive somewhere tomorrow, and they keep warning about mudslides. That's the only part of it I don't care for.
Yeah. There's that scary part. We just can't have a win.
I know, right? Because we can't just enjoy the rain. What is your shirt today? Because Steve always has a good shirt on.
Oh, I'm just wearing a MagFest shirt from 2017.
An oldie.
An oldie, yeah, the Castlevania year.
Oh, cool.
Shout out
Steve
to
always
anyone
has
who
good
was there.
T-shirts on. Shout out to your MagFest peeps.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. There's a few of them that listen to the show, so.
Yeah, you know what? Something kind of cool happened to me this past weekend at a convention. I met a couple listeners, which was great. And then I had our card on the table, which is on one side a Pokemon card and the other side a Yu-Gi-Oh card. And it says 4Kids Flashback. And I was signing an autograph for someone, and he said, "You're 4Kids Flashback?" And I said, "Yeah. Have you heard of us?" He goes, "Yeah. There was that One Piece video. There was a recent One Piece. Somebody made a video about what was it? If 4Kids."
I totally forgot to even plug this because I mentioned it on the One Piece podcast before. But let me get it up real quick here just to make sure.
Yeah, someone talked about us in this. Steve will find it. But this guy knew our name from that.
Yeah. The YouTube user is Yasti, and he made a video called "What if 4Kids Still Adapted One Piece?" And
what is the YouTube user's name? Can you spell it so people can find it?
YASDEE.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think they were already well into making this video, and then they found out about our show and gave it seemed like they're very indebted to a lot of the work we've done, and cited a lot of our interviews with cast members.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Had a lot of very nice things to say about this, about us, and it's a great video too. And I think I would say, not just because they listen to our show, but one of the more well-researched videos talking about 4Kids for sure.
Yeah, and I think they hadn't even listened to the David Moo yet. I feel like they said there's a David Moo coming up, and I can't wait to see it. So the fact that they did this and didn't even hear Moo is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's it's a great video, and they were a nice guy. Please check out that video if you haven't already. But, I totally forgot to mention this on our previous recording, but I think I got that mixed up with when I mentioned it.
But what was funny is that seeing that did not cause this guy to come listen to our podcast. So that's why we need you guys to spread the word about our show and be like, don't just hear a reference to it. Go listen. And then
I would have thought just you're kind of the draw there. Like you're your name is, you're a headliner. So I figured like they would know already, but
no, but you know what? I don't think he named who we are.
No, he did.
He did? Okay, I forgot already.
He talked about you. He talked about me. It's, I think, just people.
Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah, so this guy must have just missed that part. But that's kind of, and I asked him, I said, oh, do you follow that channel? He goes, no, it was just something like recommended that came up. Because I thought, like, what led you to, I love kind of understanding the algorithm of how he ended up there. Because I was like, oh, you're a big One Piece guy?
Found this video. It even showed up in my recommendations.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Okay.
YouTube is a weird thing.
Weird thing. But that does remind me, subscribe, rate, and review if you do like this. We appreciate it. We do. I guess we should plug before our guest gets here. Where can they go to learn more stuff about us?
Go to our website, 4kidsflashback.com with the number 4 in the URL. There you all the links to where to listen to us, all your podcast apps, and if you like the show like a ton, go to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. Same thing with the number 4 in there. Subscribe to us on there, kick us back some bucks, and you'll get podcast a week early, ad free, and some other bonus content and access to our Discord.
We will be right back with I believe the first doctor to appear on our podcast, Jesse Gomez. Stick around. Our guest today is Dr. Jesse Gomez. He is a assistant professor at Princeton Neuroscience Institute. He's a PhD from Stanford University School of Medicine. And you're probably wondering why a doctor of his caliber has agreed to talk to us today. I was surprised as well. It's because at Stanford, he was part of a study that was called, let me get this right, Extensive Childhood Experience with Pokémon Suggests Eccentricity Drives Organization of Visual Cortex. I don't understand any of that, so thank God he's here. Welcome to the show, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's talk about why you were so qualified for this. I know as a kid you played Pokemon. Can you tell us about your introduction to it, how addicted you were, all that kind of stuff?
It's hard to remember the exact moment. It was just this phenomenon that swept across the country. And I just feel like one day you just woke up and it was your life, and it was kind of everyone was playing it. And I do fondly remember my grandmother buying me like the little Game Boy Pocket and like Pokemon Red, and it was just, I went through probably like thousands of batteries, in that year playing the game. And yeah, so I loved it, and it was and I played it all the time. It was just something that was very fascinated, and friends played it at school, and I never really stopped playing it. I mean, I still, whenever it comes a game out, I still play it on the Switch. Okay. Oh yeah, I still definitely play it whenever I have the time. Of course, much less time now, but yeah.
Okay, so are you into all aspects of Pokemon at this point? Is it like the games, the cards, the show, or is it mostly the game?
Right. When I was younger, it was definitely everything. I mean, you played the game, you had the cards, you watched the TV show. You had like folders and pencils. I mean, you had everything, like anything that Nintendo pumped out, we had. And so now it's mostly just the game.
The game.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a child, when does one decide you're going to study the brain? Like, how does this happen?
Yeah. I mean, I was really drawn towards science and math in school. And I originally wanted to be like sort of an astrophysicist. I saw Contact with like Jodie Foster and was like very obsessed with that. So I wanted to do that for a living. And then in college, when I started studying physics, it was very like problem set heavy and not like personal enough. And so I took some other courses and I got very fascinated in neuroscience. Just how the brain functioned, it's like drives who you are. And it was very meta to think that we're studying something that is us. And so it's like the brain studying itself. And I just got kind of sucked into it. There was a lab hiring somebody looking to help out with a project on face recognition. I worked in the undergrad lab of Dr. Brad Duchesne, who studied like face blindness. So some people actually can't recognize people by their faces. And so that's
fascinated by that.
Yeah. And so that's what got me sort of sucked into the world of vision neuroscience. And then I just got my PhD from there, and it kind of just kept snowballing and turned into.
Okay, we were talking about this in the intro, and it's so off. It's like a tangent, but we'll get back on track, I swear. Have you dissected a lot of brains?
I've dissected a couple human brains. We collect some of them, actually, tissue samples for research in the lab. We mostly study living brains, like with the MRI machine, but we do have some
Not with, you don't dig in.
Post-mortem work. But yeah, I've done a lot of we do a lot of outreach at schools. We do brain demos. We do like sheep dissection and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely anatomy is definitely a part of neuroscience. So I've handled some brain.
I was just squeamish talking about the frog and the starfish they made me touch. So yeah. Okay. Big credit to you for that. Okay. So you're at Stanford, a pretty serious institution, and somebody says, let's study Pokemon? Like, how does this happen?
Right.
And did they take you seriously?
Yeah, so I was the one who had the idea, and I was getting my PhD on brain development, because we're just interested in sort of how does the circuitry of the brain emerge during childhood, and how does experience interact with it and sculpt it? And we use the visual system as a sort of test bed because it's really easy to put someone in the MRI machine and show them a picture. And we're very visual creatures, so like we recognize faces. That's like a huge aspect of our daily life. We read words, which is another big aspect. This is all part of the visual system. So it's a useful way to see like, okay, how does getting better at reading change the brain and stuff like that. But at the time, I think Pokemon, oh no, this was before Pokemon Go. We'd started the study before then, but it was around the same time. There was this sort of outstanding question. If you like measure visual cortex in the MRI machine and you show people pictures of like faces and words and scenes, you can find these clusters of neurons, and they're always in the same place in everyone's brain. So the big question is like, why? Why is it organized the same way? And one way to get around that would be like, okay, what if you learn a new category of visual stimuli? And I was thinking for a while about what that could be. And another aspect to consider too is that you can learn new things as an adult, but your brain is less plastic, it's less responsive to change. And so you won't get like a new brain region. You have to learn it in childhood. And I was like, wow, gosh, do I really want to like have kids learn a new object? It would take years, in a PhD, you only have so many years. And then I was playing Pokemon Day and was just like, oh my God, this is it. Like I've been playing this since I was 7. Like I know there's hundreds of characters. Like this has got to be it. Like if there's not a brain region for this, then there's not a brain region for something else. So that's kind of how the idea happened. But to get back to your point, I approached. Well, at first, I don't think I told my professor, who was my mentor at the time, who was like my PhD mentor. I think we just sort of created an fMRI experiment, and we had some funds for it, so we just scanned.
What is fMRI?
Oh, sorry, sure, yeah.
Definitely talk to us like we're 6, right, because like even like cortex, like it's a word I've heard for years. Do I really know what a cortex is?
Yeah. No. Sure. So in cognitive neuroscience was a study of like human behavior and what is it about the brain and how does it support our cognition, our ability to think and behave around the world. So one way to measure it is through magnetic resonance imaging, an MRI machine. Many people have probably had experience with it at hospitals. So that same machine, you can actually change some parameters, and you can measure blood oxygenation, which is related to neural activity. So when a region starts becoming active, it requires more oxygenated blood, and we can actually detect that with MRI. And so because we're measuring function, we call it functional MRI, which is fMRI. And so what's useful there is that you can show people different pictures at different times, and you can ask like what brain region responded more to this thing than that thing, and it helps us localize certain functions in different regions of the brain. So we basically programmed a very simple experiment. We said like, okay, let's show people typical categories that we know the brain has specialized regions for, like faces and words and places. And then we included Pokemon. And in my brain, and my friend Michael Barnett's brain, who's the second author, we saw something and we're like, okay, well, maybe this is a thing. So we scanned a third person who we knew played Pokemon since they were a kid, and we saw it in them. So then I went to my professor and I was like, well, we have this, we're sitting on this data and it's kind of interesting. And she was like, she kind of sighed because it's the idea that there might be other brain regions out there is kind of a hot topic and it's debated, and she didn't want to really get dragged into it. And so she was like, she's like, scan a few more people and then I'll think about it, right? So we collected a few more people and it showed up again. And she was like,
Can I ask which Pokemon you showed them?
right.
I'm so curious.
So I tried to keep the experiment as controlled as possible. So I focused on similarly aged people who started playing Generation 1, so the red and blue version. And so we were showing those Pokemon characters. I would imagine that it would generalize to like other generations, but I just really wanted to focus.
No, that's a safer way to,
on a single generation. Because as you get further in generations, they started to come in color, and then they started to move, and then they started to become 3D. And so the first generation seemed really controlled because it was 2D and they didn't move. And so it was much more like, from a scientist's point of view, quantifiable. Like I could measure it more easily, compared to like, moving things, and it becomes a lot more complicated.
Lowe's knows how to help pros save. That's why the new MyLowe's Pro Rewards program lets you unlock exclusive member deals on the things you need every day on the job. Plus, MyLowe's Pro Rewards members can get volume discounts on eligible orders through a quote of $2,000 or more. Join for free today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Exclusions, more terms and restrictions apply. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Department of Defense is working with Google to help secure America's digital defense systems, from establishing cloud-based zero-trust solutions to deploying the latest AI technology. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Hey there, travelers. Kaylee Cuoco here. Sorry to interrupt your music, great artist BT Dubs, but wouldn't you rather be there to hear it live? With Priceline, you can get out of your dreams and into your dream concert. They've got millions of travel deals to get you to that festival, gig, rave, sound bath, or sonic experience you've been dreaming of. Download the Priceline app today, and you can save up to 60% off hotels and up to 50% off flights. So don't just dream about that trip. Book it with Priceline.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
So you get this new group of people. You're like, let me prove this thesis to my professor. So a couple more people get into the machine, the MRI machine, and the brain section lights up again.
Yeah, and it lights up again, and it seems to be in a unique location. So because you have regions that respond to faces, right? And so Pokemon have faces. So one possibility is that these existing brain regions just also process these other things that we've become experts at. But it seemed to not be overlapping. It was in a different section. So it was like, okay, so these other cells seem to have specialized. And so we got to 10 participants, and it was in all 10 of them, and it was very consistent. And so it was actually easy to find 10 people because it was in the Bay Area. So like it was very easy to find someone at Google who like played Pokemon still and started in the 90s. And it was actually harder to find adults who had never played it and like didn't watch the cartoon. That was actually a little bit harder of a task.
Oh, that's so funny.
Maybe in the Bay Area because it's a very nerdy place, I suppose. It's harder. So I tracked down people who like grew up in kind of like conservative households where they didn't have TV and stuff. And so that worked out. And then they didn't show this region. They still have this region in their brain. Like but it just responds to other things. And it doesn't seem to be selectively responsive to Pokemon.
Is it similar to the way they respond to animals? Because Pokemon are animalistic.
Yeah, in their brain, it would just basically respond to animals and like body parts and things like animate living things that are kind of like not faces, but also not Pokemon. It just, yeah.
This is going to sound strange, but like, is there, if I touch my brain, is there an area where like you would say that is? Like, is it in the back of the brain, in the front, in the left? Like, where is it exactly?
Yeah, so this region is in the temporal lobe. So it's on the side of the brain, sort of behind your ears. And vision starts technically in the occipital lobe, which is the very back of your head. And then the information sort of gets processed there and it flows forward towards your ears in the temporal lobe. And the more it gets processed, the more like complicated the representation is. So it's like, first you have brain cells in the very beginning of the very first part of the brain where visual information arrives. You have cells that just kind of respond to lines. And then the next cells that they pass their information onto respond to curves. And then the next cells they respond to shapes. And so we think the cells are building up a representation of what you're looking at. And then eventually a few steps later, you arrive at these cells that respond to faces or Pokemon.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's
okay,
really
so you go back to
fascinating.
your professor and you're like, okay, we think we have something here.
Yeah.
And she agrees, I guess.
Yeah, so we do some more sort of control experiments. We include animals and I forget, we did a bunch of behavioral testing too because we wanted to test different theories of, I don't have to get into the weeds, I suppose, about the science, but we wanted to test other theories because the original reason I thought Pokemon were such a good option is that because these brain regions that specialize for faces and places, for example, like scenes, they always appear, one appears on the left side of the temporal lobe and one appears on the right side of the temporal lobe. And there's different reasons why people think that might be. So the side that the face region's on likes curvy objects and lines, and the side that the place region is on likes really long straight lines, which is kind of like a room in a hallway. And so people go, okay, maybe these regions become face selective because they have a really early preference for curvy stimuli, like images, and faces have lots of curves in them. So maybe that's why. But then you can also, people have previously shown that the left side also likes animate things that are alive, and then the other side likes inanimate things, which like a scene is not a living thing. And so people were like, maybe that's why it's organized the way it is. And so there were these different competing theories, but no one really had any definitive proof. And I thought Pokemon was good because it's really small. And that was another competing theory, is like maybe it's the size of the thing. Rooms are really big and faces are kind of small. And I thought Pokemon was perfect because they're even smaller than faces. So maybe they'll appear even more to the side on that brain. But they were also in the 90s very pixelated, right? They had like those big 90s pixels. And so they were more linear. They had more straight lines than a face does. But maybe they're not as linear as a room. So maybe if a Pokemon region emerges, maybe it'll be in the middle. And they're animate, but not like totally animate. You don't look at like a Pikachu on a Game Boy and think like that's a living thing, but you can tell it kind of looks like an animal. So it was like the perfect stimulus because each theory predicted a different place for it to like emerge if as a brain region. And so that's what we were testing. So we had people rate Pokemon, like how living do you think this thing is, or how curvy or like straight linear would you rate this thing? So we had a bunch of people rate it. And we did like image analysis on Pokemon too to get like an objective measure of like how curvy or linear they are. So we had all these predictions, and then we could compare it to the actual data we collected from the brain.
Wow. And is the end goal with this to prove that there is another region? Is that like sort of the end goal of this whole thing?
My end goal was not to prove that there was a Pokemon region. It was more to sort of pin down why is the brain organized this way. It's amazing that there was a region, and like I love that. And we've scanned other people and we replicated it. So like I don't think it was just a one-off thing that was special in like Bay Area brains. I think it's like very, but it was more getting
Bay Area brains. Yeah. That's your band's name,
yeah,
definitely.
Exactly. But it was more getting at the deeper question of how does experience map on to our brain, and why it turns out that it's like the shared visual experience we all have leads to our shared brain organization. An example of that would be somebody who grew up like never seeing faces. Like you won't get a face selective region. It won't emerge. And instead it becomes selective for something else. Or you can scan adults who are illiterate. They never learned to read. You actually have another cluster of neurons that respond to letters and words, and they help you read. But it's experience dependent. So if you don't get experience with words, you don't get this word region.
Right. Okay. And this is a sidebar, and then we're going to get back to the study itself. But so Steve went to art school. Mm-hmm. He's a professional artist. Did they ever teach you about how the brain works so that you can make art that speaks to people's different, like the way he's talking about curves? And it would be such a useful tool for an artist, I would think.
Yeah, so this is a good question. My PhD mentor at Stanford, she's a really great artist. She's actually really into art. She's also a visual neuroscientist, but there's a lot of principles of vision that were sort of like understood by artists before science scientists like learned about it and quantified it.
It just worked and then it added up with the science, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So she, so she has a lot of wonderful examples of that, but I think artists are probably just very much more in tune to like visual information that much of us take for granted. Like, how does a shadow work, and how does it change the color, and how do these shapes come together to make a face? Because if I try to draw a face, it looks so distorted and strange. And so they definitely have much more visual control over these things, I think, than
Yeah, Steve, do you think about that at all when you're drawing? Is it it's totally subconscious that this could be pleasing to us laymen?
In terms of like some of the details you was just mentioning with like shadows and all that, I'm trying to think if I have a nuanced take on this at all. I just remember because, often like when I was young, most stuff I was drawing was the stuff I, liked watching on TV and video games, all that, like Pokemon. I drew a ton of Pokemon. And I think I remember it might have been my dad just been like, "You're just drawing this for like memory." And it's like, yeah. It's like, it's like I often, like, it got to a point where like I by like age 10, I knew how to draw a Pikachu from my head. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's accessing that same point, but it's, I don't know. It's something I can't explain. It's just like, no, I've seen it enough times. I know it,
yeah.
Yeah. And
there's also the fandom too.
Yeah. But I mean, people have very different art styles, and I think people identify or have preferences for what they find like beautiful or attractive. And so, there's lots of these different ideas. I mean, you could think of like impressionism, right? Like, there's very little detail, but like when you zoom out, it's this holistic, wow, it's beautiful, and you see this scene. But if you look close, there's really nothing there identifiable. And while we're on the topic too, there's an artist, Chuck Close, who does a lot of portraits.
Oh yeah.
But he's face blind. He has prosopagnosia.
Oh wow.
And so that's really interesting too, because he likes drawing faces, but he himself is terrible at recognizing faces. And so, yeah.
I am terrible. I had an ex-boyfriend who used to pause, like if there's a show where like the characters look the same, he would pause it and be like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "I don't know." But I don't think I have I think I'd know if I had an extreme version of it. But yeah. Okay, back to the test. So you get the approval to do this test. How many participants? What was the most shocking thing? What happens next?
Yeah, I mean, we got like 10 or 11 in each group being, experts and then novices. And so we scanned them on with the fMRI machine or the MRI machine on a bunch of different tests to verify certain things. I think we also included like scenes from the Pokemon game, like images of like Pallet Town and Cerulean City and stuff to make sure like, okay, is this region selective for Pokemon characters, or is it just anything Pokemon? And so actually, interestingly, the scenes from the game activated the scene selective region in the brain that we typically use to recognize places and navigate. And so, so it seemed to be that this region was selective for Pokemon, and we think it that way because we still don't understand why it is, but we think it's because there are hundreds of different characters that you have to individuate between. So you can't just be like, "Oh, that's a Pokemon," just like you say, like, "Oh, that's a mug," right? It has to be that specific Pokemon, and there's all this information attached to it. And the game really emphasizes you knowing the difference between them because you get rewarded for it. You'll be better at battling if you know type match-ups and all these sorts of things. But there's really no huge motivation for like quickly recognizing like, "Oh, that's Lavender Town," and I know exactly where it's not emphasized the same way.
Yeah.
And so that's why we think you don't get a brain region for every type of object you've seen in your life, right? Like coffee mugs or like bicycles, because you don't spend your life quickly trying to recognize that specific bike or that specific coffee mug like you do for Pokemon.
And is it part of the reward? It's because there's a reward system in place. Is that kind of
that's what we think, but like we haven't tracked down yet like what brain region is telling visual cortex, "Hey, you did a good job. You should start to specialize for this thing." We don't really know that like high level aspect of it yet, but we just know that enough visual experience individuating these things will lead to this sort of representation in the brain.
And to get this to be like what you finish with, do all 10 participants have to have this region? Were there any outliers or like, "Oh, that's weird, that guy played his whole life and doesn't have this region," or was it pretty consistent?
It was pretty consistent. It varied in size across people. I mean, it could have also just been like, the quality of our data depends heavily on like how awake you are. And sometimes when you're laying in the machine for like 45 minutes, like you get tired. And so some people's might show a smaller response, and it could just be that they were tired, and a lot of us are like fatigued graduate students and stuff. But like it was consistently in the same place. You can actually like align brains together using software because we can reconstruct the brain. And then you can actually align someone's brain to someone else's brain, and then you can actually like quantitate or quantify like, are these in the same place or not? And we could verify that they were in the same place, which
That's so cool.
was really fascinating. Yeah, as far as projects go, it was like remarkably consistent. And usually science is a little bit dirtier than that, and you have to like do some fancy stuff to find the signal in the noise. But this was very like, wow, it's just there. It was kind of nice.
Yeah. And I mean, I heard about this study years ago. I think I a Twitter article popped up years ago, and I still call it Twitter. But, and I was like, this is so cool. And I've been talking about this for years. Like when I meet kids at a convention, I go, oh, there's a part of your brain that's dedicated to, like, I've been fascinated by it. And I suddenly was like, you know what? I got to find that guy.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited that this worked out.
Yeah.
So, okay. So how long, like over what kind of period is this study going on? Is it a semester? Is it 2 years?
It was about a couple years from like initial conceptualization of the idea to having collected all the data to starting to write the actual research paper. And as we're writing the paper too, you have to motivate like why Pokemon was a good idea. And the more we were collecting data, the more it occurred to me that it was just like the perfect stimulus, because another aspect of, I've been calling it like visual cortex, and cortex is like the outside part of your brain where the neurons live. It's like a Latin word for like the outer shell of something.
Okay.
And then, underneath of the cortex, you have all of the axons, which are like the neurons send these protrusions called axons. So that's how they send signals to one another. It's like this really long arm that they send to make connection with another neuron. But visual cortex has we call it like low level visual cortex. So I talked about those early cells that just respond to lines. And then you have high level visual cortex, which respond to these complex objects. One feature of these high level neurons in vision is that you might find a cell that responds to a face, and you can rotate the face around and it still responds. So we call that invariant object recognition, because it'll respond regardless of how you vary the stimulus. It's robust to those changes. And what was great about Pokemon is that the whole franchise really emphasized you recognizing that Pokemon in the game, and you had to know that the Pikachu on the screen was the same one as the card, which was the same one on the television show. And so it really encouraged your visual system to sort of generalize from across different representations. And I think that also further ingrained these neurons and trained these neurons to really represent.
Does nostalgia play any part in this, or the happiness, or let's say a kid hated the game or loved the game, does that affect any of this stuff?
It probably does. I mean, I would imagine a kid who doesn't like it is not going to play it as much. They'll get less experience. And then kids who do like it are going to get those internal reward signals to keep playing the game and keep, learning these facts about the Pokemon. And even the TV show, who's that Pokemon? I would show you a black silhouette. It was training you to recognize these things with as little information as possible. It was the perfect kind of experiment in the wild. It was really remarkable.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated with nostalgia in general. Is this again? We'll get back to the study, but is there something chemically that happens with this nostalgia? Like when I meet these kids at a convention and they see an image of a Pokemon, is serotonin released? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, so nostalgia, I suppose, is hard because when you're learning these as a kid, I think it's not so much I guess my definition of nostalgia is when you're older and looking back on something you fondly liked a long time ago, whereas a kid looking at something they like and recognizing it, that is a rewarding thing, right? I saw something and I recognized it and realized it's something that I like. I'm sure there is some internal reward signal for sure that instantiates that behavior of recognizing this thing. But yeah, nostalgia I think is maybe a more complicated cognitive phenomenon that I don't know if we've studied very heavily.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. And I did look for studies about it because I literally can be talking to an adult or and they'll just be talking, and I can tell they want to hear the voice, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I'll do the voice for them, and something happens.
Yeah.
And I see the external of what happens, but I'm so curious what's going on in their heads, you know?
Yeah.
So I hope someone does something really deep with that.
Yeah, I mean, part of recalling a memory is that you might get a little piece of that memory. Like, say you see a building that kind of looked like your childhood home, and you'll go, oh, that red color is familiar. Oh, that was like my childhood home. And then part of a memory is that the brain structure in your brain called the hippocampus, which kind of encodes these memories, will reactivate those brain regions and those neurons that were active when you first encountered that thing. And so we call that reinstatement. And so it's possible that when you do the voice for somebody, right, like it reinstates like a lot of aspects of not just the voice, but like sitting in front of the TV, being really carefree on a Saturday, like playing Pokémon with it probably enacts a whole
It's the bigger
host of
thing.
things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that goes like the same with like trauma, right? If like something, a certain experience might reignite like a memory of something, and it's just because like that's a similar feeling you had all those years ago. So that's why all of a sudden I'm like, why am I thinking about this again?
Yeah, it goes both ways. And for whatever reason, like the brain seems to like ruminate more on the negative ones than the positive ones. And it's like,
right. Of course. And this, again, this is the most important question. I should have asked you right away. Who was your starter?
It was Bulbasaur for sure.
See, and I say this, the smartest kids who become neuroscientists.
My phone wallpaper has been Venusaur for like years. Like it's been
oh my gosh,
for years.
Yeah.
Like
we should say this lovely doctor just showed me a screensaver of Venusaur. He has the Pokemon Time magazine behind him. I see some other stuff on the
there's probably some more Pokemon here. Yeah, I'll vandalize it for you there.
It's very encouraging that children should be playing.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
McDonald's meets the Minecraft universe with one of 6 collectibles and your choice of a Big Mac or 10-piece McNuggets with spicy Nether Flame sauce. Now available with a Minecraft movie meal.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time, a Minecraft movie only in theaters.
Okay, so we always hear like that we only use a very small percentage of our brain. So is this must be like a good thing that you're like, oh, more brain space is becoming so like, is there a lesson in this, like we should encourage children to play Pokemon or something else like that, like kids are obsessed with dinosaurs, learning all the names of dinosaurs? Is there a region for that?
It's very possible that there's a lot of going on there. So one thing is that what I liked about it is that these individuals who became Pokemon experts and seem to have a region that's specialized for it still had all the other normal regions you typically see in an individual. They have normal face regions, normal word regions. They can read well. I mean, most of these people were like working at Google or getting their PhD. So like it clearly did not have a negative impact on their development. And so my take home message that I would often tell parents is that, the brain can accommodate this additional experience. You can learn multiple languages. And if anything, that makes you better. And being bilingual, actually, you hit like developmental milestones faster than a kid who has only one language experience. And so, the brain likes this information. So it's not like learning Pokemon means you're overtaking and getting rid of something else. That's not the case.
Yeah, we're not at risk of overfilling our brains.
Yeah. And then
you asked a lot of evidence of that.
Right. And you asked too if like we only use a small part of our brain. It's sort of a misconception, I suppose, in that all of your brain is like used. Like this, if a cell is really not being used, your brain will just get rid of it because it's taking up energy and it'll get rid of it. So if a cell exists in your brain, it's being used. But I think where that came from is that at any given moment, only some small number of cells are actually like active. And you don't want all of them to be active at the same time. That's basically a seizure. So, I mean, it's kind of...
Is that really what would cause that? Is that...
Yeah.
I mean, because, we know about the seizure caused by the lights in Pokemon in Japan.
That's
so
true, yeah.
You brought it full circle.
Yeah, that's right. I remember being a kid wanting to see that episode after hearing that rumor because they took it off TV before I got to see it, I think. But
they never aired it here. Yeah, they never aired here.
Yeah, which is
not unfortunately, but I mean,
right. Yeah, but they were certainly airing things that could have probably also caused seizures. But the idea there is that you really don't want all of them active because your brain, based on the pattern of activity, it knows what's happening. It knows what you're looking at. So if they're all active, it's confusing to the brain, right? Like it would be like, it's hard to think of an example, I suppose, but it would be like turning on all the lights, right? You don't know exactly like when what room somebody is in because all the lights are on. But if you know there's one light on, it's like, okay, they're there. That's better information than having all the lights on. So anyway, that's just something I wanted to like address too, because I think a lot of people think that.
Yeah, I never knew how accurate that was. It just feels like such a cliche to say we only use this percentage of our yeah, okay. So you've disproved that.
The field probably has, yeah.
So okay, did you expect this study to get the attention it got?
I figured it would get some attention because it's just kind of out there. It was like Pokemon, and it's a little bit more mainstream than a sort of like not a boring, but like Envision, our stimuli tend to be like kind of boring. They're really well controlled, and so I thought this would get some attention, but it definitely like blew up a lot. More than I thought it would. And so it was exciting though. It was a great opportunity to like talk about neuroscience and like the brain and get people engaged. And the paper came out like very close to when like Pokemon Go came out. So it was just this sort of constructive timing, and it was
well, because like before Pokemon Go came out, I feel like there was a lull in like Pokemon in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
So it really probably was great timing.
Or maybe it had come out around the Pokemon movie. I can't remember which was which. It all blurs together in my memory at this point.
Yeah.
But it was around one of them, and maybe Go was happening. But there was a little bit of a lull, I think, and I think it reignited it, perhaps.
It's so cool that people started to learn about the brain because of this. I remember just being fascinated. And I don't know if this is something you specialize in or you understand, but we find that I meet at these conventions. There's so many children on the spectrum with neurodivergence.
Yeah.
They gravitate towards a show like Pokemon, and want to memorize everything. Is there something to that? Is it because they? You tell me. I don't know the right question to ask.
No, you're definitely hitting on something. I think, you can find blogs of, people with autism writing like, this is why I like the show and this is why I think, autistic people. So they probably have a better first person experience about why it is. But
right.
It definitely is something. I think there's been previous work showing something like a third of all kids have what they would classify as like an extremely intense interest. So like dinosaurs, for example, cars. 30% of kids have this sort of condition, if it's even a condition. And then like
I was gonna say conditions makes it sound like a bad thing.
No, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. And then,
but it's not. Yeah, it's just a thing. Yeah.
And then of those kids with these extreme interests, like 3/4 of them are like boys, and I don't know. There's something there. And then like autism is more heavily diagnosed or has a higher probability of being diagnosed in males and females. So there's probably something related there. I don't know if we know exactly what it is. So I don't have a specific answer for you. Like this brain region does this, and that's why these people are more interested in things. Like there's no answer for something like that. It's really complicated. Right. We don't even have a good answer for what like autism really is. It's a spectrum. It's so strange, so different, but across people. But I would say that I don't know. Certainly aspects of the game, like it operates on these strict rules, right? Like here are all the Pokemon. If you memorize them, they all have types, and there's like this internal rule system that I think people like discovering, and then I feel like it gives people a sense of control when you have that understanding and that consistency about something, because there's this whole taxonomy and there's rules to it, and I can understand that, so I have strong control over this topic, and I think maybe that's what's potentially rewarding.
Right.
But it's hard to know exactly what it is that really fascinates these people. It's hard to know.
And like I've done Pokemon trivia contests at conventions, and I can't believe what people are able to retain.
Yeah.
And some of them, I've heard the word, what's the word when photographic memory.
Right.
Does that have something to do with it? Like, is that a real thing? What is that?
Yeah, photographic memory is a thing. I'm forgetting the scientific term for it. It starts with a D. But there are people with this, and they remember like everything like perfectly details. There are people, and then there are like kind of subsets of it too, where some people are like super recognizers. They'll remember someone's face. They'll like their childhood friend from that they haven't seen since like first grade. They'll recognize them as like a 40-year-old adult and be like, "Hey, it's me." And they're like, "What? I don't know who you are." And like it's like upsetting to some people because they're like weirded out by it. But there are people out there who just have these like super abilities to like recognize things and remember things. And it's possible that maybe something like that is more common in these sort of neurodivergent conditions, but I don't know if that's been quantified. I'm sure that someone's looked into that, but it's not my area of expertise per se, so it's hard to know.
No, thank you for answering that. One of our listeners wanted to know if you could talk about the protein called Pikachurin that was named after Pikachu.
Right. Yeah. So one of the fun things about science, and I'm not in that area of science, but if you discover a new sort of protein, you get to name it, right? And there are tons of proteins out there, so people are still naming them. But of course, that person probably liked Pokemon and named it. But what I think is interesting is, if I recall, Pikachurin was a protein that's predominantly found in like the eye of the retina, and like I studied Pokemon from the point of view of the visual system, so they're actually kind of somewhat related, right? Like Pikachurin being in your eye helps you process visual stimuli, and one of which could be Pokemon. So I thought that was interesting that they're somewhat related. But there are lots of interesting named like proteins out there that just have these really wacky names.
I want one named after me now.
Right, yeah.
Now that's my new goal.
You have to go get a PhD in structural biology, I think.
Nah, I just would like someone to name it after me. I don't want to have to do anything for it. Is that so wrong? So what did you take away from this experiment? Like, can you talk about what you do now and how all this stuff kind of overlaps in your life? Maybe you're like, oh, actually, in that study, we learned this, so I can apply it here.
Yeah. So now I run a research lab here at Princeton in the Neuroscience Institute. And a professor. So part of being a professor, at least in STEM or like science, is some of it is teaching, and then some of it is like running a research lab where you try and make these scientific discoveries in advanced science. It actually turns out to be mostly grant writing, because you're always trying to get funding for the science to happen, and all your graduate students are the ones doing the science. So they don't tell you that when you're in grad school, that it's mostly a writing job. But that's crazy. But it's still exciting, right? To like be doing science and making these discoveries. It's really cool. So we study. The name of my lab is the Brain Development Lab. But we're really interested in just sort of understanding how experience sculpts the brain, how the brain is changing during childhood, both in terms of its function and its structure, and also trying to understand what happens when that development sort of goes awry in conditions like dyslexia or autism is another example. But to answer your question about the study, so one direction we're taking the Pokemon experiment is that so we were studying visual cortex, the visual part of the brain, but you also have an auditory part of the brain, right? And Pokemon also made these strange little sounds from the original game, right? That were very distinct. And auditory cortex is interesting in that it's much less well understood compared to visual cortex. It's not, we know a lot about auditory cortex, but like how it's organized and its consistency across people, and we don't know as much about it as we do vision. So the idea here is to take a similar approach and find individuals who can identify Pokemon by their sounds, which I think is going to be a little bit of a harder task. But they're out there. But see if we can apply the same principles. Can we analyze something about Pokemon sounds and make a prediction about how they're different from sounds like voices and instruments and animals, and then make a prediction about maybe where in the brain a region would appear, and then either scan adults who have this expertise, or potentially give kids like an old Game Boy and have them play it over a year or two, and then measure their brain activity longitudinally and see how it changes as they learn this new auditory category.
I nominate Steve to get the MRI done.
Right. Can you recognize their sounds?
A lot.
Yeah. With the Pokemon ones, I mean, wouldn't say that's my forte. I just remember reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just, I know there's some I could recognize for sure, but I remember, not necessarily related. It just reminded me of a funny story. How one time my friends and I was like, all right, it was like a random generator for Pokemon sprite sounds. It's like, and we're all going to try to recreate it as best we can.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Like making the sounds, but Generation 1, like I recognize them pretty well. Like there are some that I can see and I just hear the little sound it made. Like it's like almost like a synesthesia. Like when you see somebody, like you can imagine their voice. It's like exactly like that. And so, it's not like that for the newer versions, I'd say, but Generation 1 and some of Generation 2 Pokemon, I can definitely do that for. Bulbasaur would be
not
one
all
for
thousand
sure.
of them?
Not all thousand of them, unfortunately.
But see, but what did Bulbasaur, I don't really actually know what Bulbasaur sounded like because we did it in the anime, but that voice wasn't always used in the games. Like you're talking more about the pixelated games, like those sounds.
Yeah.
I think we should do it with the anime voices.
The problem with that though is that you actually have a region in your the auditory part of your brain, a cluster of cells that responds to human voices, and so somebody saying like Bulbasaur is going to like probably activate that part of the brain.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so it would probably be considered speech. It technically is speech, right?
Fine, I won't be in the study. I mean, my big takeaway from this is that we should encourage children to play Pokemon. Is that the right takeaway here?
I mean, yeah, assuming it doesn't take away time from like learning other things that are important for school. Like it's not a bad thing, right? And it's
you did okay.
Yeah. And as far as games go, I mean, it's not terrible. Like you have to learn all these rules, and there's like a little bit of calculus and deciding like, okay, which Pokemon am I going to use in this battle? Which ones? But there's thinking and there's problem solving, and it's not a terrible game. It's not mind numbing by any means.
Yeah. We had someone on who was a voice actor with us, but she's a child therapist now.
Okay.
And she was saying that, back in the old days, remember when like the cards weren't allowed in school?
Yeah.
Now she's so happy when she sees kids with the trading cards because it means they're interacting with humans together. So it's like just insane how this has all changed. And we're like, yes, please play with the cards because it means you're talking to Fred or whoever.
Yeah.
I don't know why I named that kid Fred.
That's
not really a name that most kids have anymore.
Especially when there's plenty of other distractions that don't require as much, processing and all that. So
No, it's true, and I think that social interaction is so important for development. Study after study shows that like the more social interaction you have, the longer you live. I mean, it's just we're humans. We were evolved to be social creatures, and so I think it's unnatural to not be social. In some sense of the word, but so I think it's good that the kids interact and play, and I mean, there's lots of stories too with like people with autism, like Pokemon is a sort of like window into interacting with some kids who are almost nonverbal sometimes. That you can talk to them, they'll light up, and you can like use them as sort of like metaphors, like, oh, how do you feel? Do you feel like Psyduck today, or do you feel like gloom today? And like, oh, I feel like gloom today, and you can like start to get it, like their internal thinking.
Yes. It's amazing. There's a kid that I've met over the years who's nonverbal autistic. He says a few words, but he says the names of the Pokemon, and we've like sung them together. And I mean, it's just,
That's
it's
sweet.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's whatever it takes to get him to feel like he can communicate.
Yeah.
The parents are so happy. It's like.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
I wonder if there's a reason why it tends to be more animated characters and not live action characters. Why not the Power Ranger as opposed to the Pokemon? Maybe is it because maybe of the animal-like qualities?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. In that case, too, it's possible that this is pure speculation. I'm not totally sure. One of the underlying symptoms or currents of ASD or autism spectrum disorder too is this sort of like an impairment in social interaction, and the definition of that is interacting with other people. So maybe seeing live action people, they just perceive them as a person, and then that brings on some sort of anxiety.
Right.
And whereas a character is like high contrast, it's colorful, it's flashy, it's fun to look at, and that it's not going to like want to ask you questions and like look at you and interact with you. So maybe it's like less anxiety inducing because you can just observe it and have fun with it.
It's safer.
Yeah, exactly.
Give your kids a summer full of fun and learning. Give them ID Tech. ID Tech camps are all about high-energy fun, meeting new friends, and are taught by elite instructors. Located at 75 prestigious college campuses all across the country, ID Tech features over 50 epic courses like BattleBots, AI and machine learning, coding, game design, and more. There's something for every kid ages 7 to 17 at ID Tech. Sign up at idtech.com and use code IDTech to save $150 on a week of a lifetime.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This was fascinating. If there's anything else, I'd love to let you go. Unless there's anything else you want to say, or Steve, you want to ask from this real life brainiac that we have on our show.
This stuff is fun to do, so I'm happy to answer questions.
And if you have questions,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, this has been awesome. So does anyone else want to chime in? I've manipulated. I mean, I can't speak. I've monopolized the conversation. So if there's anything else you guys want to say.
I guess I would like to know too, like, I guess how did you get into the voice acting? Like, were you doing other stuff and you're like, what the hell is this? I guess I'll apply for it. Like, was it sort of like out of your range? Like, I'm just curious, like,
yeah,
how it came to
I mean,
be,
it's like you. Like, if someone said, "Are you going to be a neuroscientist?" You wouldn't have said, "Yes, that's exactly."
Yeah.
I was an actor doing everything I possibly could. My first day at Pokémon, I wasn't voicing Bulbasaur. I was there, voicing a character with speaking lines. And because we had some extra time, they were like, "Try this," and I was like, "This is really weird."
Yeah.
Because imagine seeing Pokemon for the first time as an adult. It's a weirder
it's strange.
thing.
Yeah.
Because as kids just accept it. When I said to them, like, what else does Bulbasaur say? And they're like, well, that's it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, good luck. This show's I'll never see this show again.
Yeah.
So, it was just another acting job to me. I had no idea I'd be talking about it 25 years later.
Yeah. Did you have creative control? Like, you just came up with like what it sounded like, or were they like, we kind of want it to sound like this, or
They played the Japanese for me, and they said, sound like this, but say Bulbasaur instead, because they all had different names, except for Pikachu, and once in a while some other ones. But they said, don't say this word, say Bulbasaur, see if you can sound like this. We were more locked into how the Japanese sounded at that time. It's since steered away from that, and it's the sounds actually of the Pokemon, and this is kind of what I'm curious about, like, are much more animalistic sounds now. So I wonder if, like, in like episode, in season 26 or whatever, so I wonder if kids are relating in a different way to the more animalistic sounds than they are to, like, the very enunciated Bulbasaur. Like, we really enunciated it so that kids would remember the names.
Yeah. No, that's true. And that makes sense. And it plays into the whole franchise of, like, making them learn all these things and get all the exposure from every angle. Yeah.
It's smart. They did something smart. I mean, they really knew how to get into these kids' brains.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it was a good show. And some of the animes are still pretty entertaining, I would say. But did you end up getting, like, sucked into the world of Pokemon at that point? Or were you just kind of like an adult at that point and this was like a job and you didn't really like care for the show or the games or something? I'm just curious.
I'm not a good gamer. I wish I was. And I love somewhere like in between those two things. Like it was just a job, but it was also like, my little cousins like this and they'll talk to me about it. So I would learn about it so that they would think I was cool, but we never got caught. And also I think because we didn't know, we worked on, I always say this, like for every hit like Pokemon, I worked on 50 shows that no one ever wanted to watch.
Right.
So I think we always were like, it could end any minute. I'm not going to be too invested. Like that was my thing. I think that's just like a defense mechanism. Like, it could end tomorrow,
right.
And why, but now I love that I can talk to my friends' kids about it. Like the multi-generational aspect of it is what's so cool to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
I meet grandparents who are playing with their grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's people my age now with children that then their kids are playing it, and that's very interesting to think about.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I meet a lot of kids, and I know this is somewhere in the brain too, like, where they're brothers and sisters and they couldn't agree on anything, but they could agree on Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one show they could sit down and watch, or they could play the game together. And I think that also has to do with why maybe this memory of it is so strong in them, and it's locked away in that region because it's a good memory.
Yeah. No, it's true.
You know?
Yeah, no, all my childhood memories are either Pokemon or like Britney Spears or like gel pens or something. Those are like the three things that you
Gel pens.
Yeah.
I love a good gel pen.
I know. You can still buy those like Jelly Roll pens. I found them on Amazon. I was like, I'm definitely gonna buy these as an adult. Like the nostalgia again,
I mean, when you teach your students, are they psyched when they find out you did this kind of study?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Students ask about it, and I teach a class here, Introduction to Cognitive Neuroscience, and we go over many topics like memory, attention, vision, and I do cover the Pokemon paper as an example because it's just fun and engaging, and it's a great way to get people like interested and engaged with the science. And
is pop culture used in these kind of studies more than we think it is?
Yes and no. There's a very famous fMRI data set where someone scanned a bunch of adults who all watched Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they all watched this movie. And it was a data set to ask, okay, here are people watching the exact same thing. What can we learn about how the brain is similar between people? What's different between people? So there's a very famous data set called the Raiders of the Lost Ark data set. And so that's kind of another example.
Ooh, okay.
But there are other, I mean, there's been a few studies with like in children with autism where they kind of find the object they're interested in and then use like Digimon or Yu-Gi-Oh as a way to like measure their brain responses and interact with them in behavior like therapy and stuff. And so those definitely pop up again there. There's probably more examples.
So cool.
Oh yes, there's been recent stuff on Minecraft, about like how people like learn to navigate and like build 3D worlds and how they plan and interact with people. So like Minecraft has become a sort of neuroscience tool as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's one of those games that I feel like my friends don't mind their kids playing. Like there's something about it where they're like, I don't know if they think it's like feels more educational or something because there's a creativity involved in it maybe.
I would say that there's definitely truth to that. One thing that contributed to like why like they thought boys performed better in math and science was because, they would play with these toys that sort of emphasize like relational reasoning, like blocks and these construction tools. But historically for like, gender biases and stuff, they're like, oh, those aren't girls' toys. You get dolls, you don't get blocks and stuff. And so that can really contributed to these sort of differences. But I think Minecraft is a great example where it really is, like you said, very creative. Like you're building these huge structures. I don't know if you saw this, one of these insane structures, someone actually recreated the microchip that Pokemon Red ran on, and you could actually play the game in Minecraft by pushing blocks, and like they created a whole circuit with these blocks that interact. It was incredible, but like to like go back full circle, but like people can do really amazing things in that game. So again, like Minecraft as far as games go is like pretty good, I would say. For like education.
But we're still encouraging Pokemon.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your time. This has been so enlightening. I'm sure we'll get some follow-up questions from our listeners, and I'll bug you at those because this is so different than what we normally talk about. So thank you. Dr. Jesse Gomez, that was awesome.
Yeah. a little, something out of our wheelhouse, but I think for sure we learned a lot, but it was fascinating. Definitely talking about that and like, a bunch of other things relating to the brain. I feel so much smarter now coming out of that.
Yeah, right. And I feel like
I feel like I'm a pro now. I don't know.
You're a pro, but also like I think it is kind of cool that for any parent that's listening that maybe was afraid that this stuff was not good for their brain. It's just a different region. In addition to all those other regions are intact. It's not taking up the space of something else.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, because I think that was such like a common thing here. It's like, oh, this, the cliche, this will rot your brain and all that.
Yeah, that's not. No.
Yeah, I think it's like as long as it's, it's engaging, certain parts of the brain and doing something with it. I think, and it seems like this is a problem too. I mean, join the list of problems. It's like, we'll add it to the list of, a bunch of problems going on right now, but just, I'm seeing something about, like limiting, like, the kind of books you could, like, kids should read.
Yeah.
And all that.
Banning books is always an issue, but
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, only one fun book, a week or something like that. It's like,
listen, we've talked about this with the author we had on.
Yes.
Like, reading is reading. Like, if a kid wants to read, just be happy they're reading. I mean, again, I understand there's more at play in there, but yeah. Not to do like a kids these days thing, but I feel like there's more stuff out there that's worse. Sure.
Pardon the phrase here. I feel like that's smoothing the brains over, where I think it's just, apps and, sites that are just meant to just keep you on them and scrolling.
Right.
And meanwhile, I don't know. It's like we had a lot of, video games were becoming like a huge thing in the 90s with home consoles and PCs. But now it's like, there's people that have careers being professional, game, I forget what the term is, athletes, whatever, but it's like, professional game players.
Yeah.
That, they're definitely, there's this certain skill, that develops, from
that's
this,
it.
So.
I mean, and that's with, again, we talk about AI a lot, but like, we don't really know what jobs are going to exist if AI is going to replace them. So, you say, I meet all these kids and I say, find something you love, because again, like, yes, we want to make sure that people are employed and all that, but you're more likely to be employed if you're doing something you're good at and love than if you're doing something just because you got to make a buck. You'll be more committed to it. Like it's so funny. I was thinking about this today. So many of our guests, we asked the question, like, did your parents support you going into the arts? Like, that was not a question we had to ask him today. That's like one of the first guests we didn't have to ask that question of. Were they okay with you being a neuroscientist? I think they probably were. I love, like, there's so many aspects of Pokemon that I love when I see a kid take pride in their binder of cards that they've collected and how careful they are with them. Like, there's a lesson in that, there's good stuff that can come out of this. So I don't know.
And generations, like, the interests and tastes always change or evolve. It's like there's always collecting. There's always geeking or nerding out about something. It's just
right, but that's why Pokemon being multi-generational is interesting, because a kid's collecting the same card their parent did, and I don't know that we've seen that. Like, because let's say baseball cards, the kid is probably wanting the person they're seeing on TV. The person they're seeing play the game, where their parent wanted the baseball card of. But with Pokemon cards, it's the same exact card that your dad had or your mom had. And I don't know if we've seen
the
that
same
before.
characters, at least.
Yeah, right. New artwork, but still the kid wants to have one of each, so they're still going to, and then the parent's like, I had that, and they suddenly are more involved. I don't know. There's a bonding to it that I really love.
Yeah.
Dr.
I think it's
Jesse.
it seems like it's going to be going for a long time at this point.
I think so. It's bonkers. It's cool to have been a little cog in all of it. Yeah. It's pretty heady stuff, actually. Speaking of the brain, it's pretty heady stuff. Well, thank you to Dr. Jesse Gomez. Thank you guys for listening. Like we said in the beginning, patreon.com/4kidsflashback, 4kidsflashback.com. We have a great YouTube channel with a lot of the theme songs and behind the scenes videos, and all the episodes are up at youtube.com/@4kidsflashback. number 4. Don't spell it.
Mm-hmm. You got to include that at. It's
YouTube's weird.
Different.
Yeah. I think that's it. Follow us on social media, 4Kids Flashback. And we will
catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to Maji, MAJI.media. Thanks for listening.
Hi, it's Ashley and Jess with Wellness Reality Check. We are 2 health practitioners, moms, and best friends trying to navigate the world of holistic health in a balanced, productive way that brings health to our lives instead of dogmatic extremes. We'll be breaking down health trends, interviewing your favorite health influencers, and always keeping it real. We hope this podcast brings listeners back down to earth, providing a dose of reality in the often idealized world of health and wellness.
Wellness Reality Check. Follow the show now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at wellnessrealitycheck.com.
Hey guys, Tara here. If you are enjoying the 4Kids Flashback podcast, here is another podcast you will probably like. It's called the One Piece Podcast. They have been covering One Piece since 2009, so there are about 1 million episodes for you to listen to. Highly recommend it. They do all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff, break down the shows, interview actors. You're gonna dig it. Go to onepiecepodcast.com or look them up wherever you hear podcasts. And you might even hear a familiar voice that sounds a lot like Steve Yurko. Check it out now. Thanks.